the state of Latin America and what's going on there. Um, there's been some big leftist wins in Latin America, Central America, and South America. And it's kind of exciting. It's kind of a good way to look at and see what the social issues and the societal changes do to a political climate in a certain region. And I think this will be really interesting to go over with you guys about how that all works out. This is from Al Jazeera News, and it's about how left wing forces are regaining ground in Latin America. As progressives win key elections from Honduras to Peru, analysts point to changing regional dynamics. So, Latin America's political left is making a resurgence. Analysts have said as hunger and poverty rise across the region, hit especially hard by the coronavirus pandemic. Honduras is the latest country to vote out a long serving right wing government. Zamora Castro, the country's female president, won the November election with a promise to pull Honduras out of the abyss of a narco dictatorship and corruption. Castro's husband, former Honduran President Manuel Zelaya, was deposed in U.S. supported coup in 2009 during the tail end of the last wave of socialist government in Latin America a decade ago, a period dubbed the Pink Tide by analysts. So we'll kind of go over what Pink Tide is and everything like that as well. Known for his cowboy hats and thick mustache, Zelaya, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, Zelaya was part of the trend encompassing Venezuela's late Hugo Chavez, Bolivia's Evo Morales, and Ecuador's Rafael Correa. Macho leaders eager to leverage natural resource wealth in the name of reducing inequality and fostering social programs. So these guys were basically trying to bolster the natural resources in the area and the wealth in that area to reduce inequality. That sounds a little off to me. You know, it sounds like there's a disconnect there, because usually when that happens in America, it's not the people that get the rewards for that. It's the companies that run the natural resource places like oil and gas companies and things like that. So that tends to be a little bit off for me as far as that's concerned. Castro's win, in a sense, heralds a broader shift across the region as a new generation of left-wingers gain ground, said John Kavanagh, senior analyst at the Washington-based Institute for Policy Studies. What we have seen in the last 5 years is a progressive tide, but I wouldn't call it pink. Pink refers to a traditional type of socialism. What's emerging here is different, he told Al Jazeera. It's more nuanced, less macho, and more inclined for young voters who care about the environment. There are more green and more feminist currents in these movements. So that's kind of very promising, in my opinion. That we were getting more people in there that really care about equality and social issues and the environment. So this isn't your typical, I know what to do, male, kind of almost misogynistic, chauvinistic tendencies. You know, it's like this is kind of the more democratized socialism and leftism that I'm definitely more interested in, that I think is going to be better for the United States and for the world. There are, of course, plenty of exceptions to the region's leftward tilt. Ecuador, for instance, elected conservative banker Guillermo Lasso as president in April, but analysis across the political spectrum agreed change is happening. Millennial left. According to a November research note issued by the Dutch multinational bank ING, Latin American politics has already seen a decisive shift in to the left in 2021, and it is not over yet. The analysis pointed to 2022 as a big political year for the region, highlighting upcoming elections in Colombia and Brazil. Right wing incumbents look vulnerable, the bank noted. Along with Honduras, 2021 saw Pedro Castillo narrowly win the presidency in Peru. Previously unknown to many voters, the former rural teacher pledged to better share the country's vast mineral wealth and take more royalties from mining companies he accused of plundering the Andean nation. His popularity has, however, taken a hit amid recent corruption allegations. I haven't read in too much into these corruption allegations as far as that's concerned. I do know that the people were very excited about this guy when he came in. Let me see what these allegations are, because that's interesting. Peru prosecutors to question president amid impeachment threat. Well, let's see here. Questioning for as a part of an investigation for the promotion of certain military officers, adding pressure on the socialist leader as legislators weigh in on an impeachment process. 2 ex-military heads say they were relieved of their duties after refusing to promote certain officials, allegedly recommended by Castillo. Well, I mean, that seems like he's playing hardball to me. I mean, I don't know how how much power their military has down there, but I mean, if he thinks that there are people in the military who aren't going to, play ball as far as his policies are concerned, I can see where he would probably want to make some changes. Let's see here. They gave testimony before Peru's public prosecutor late last month. Local newspaper La Repubblica reported on Tuesday. The new allegations come as Castillo already faces the weakest moment of his presidency, which began just 4 months ago. Opposition legislators are pressing for possible impeachment, and his approval rating has hit a record low of 25%. Man, they must have some good propaganda down there. Last week, prosecutors raided the government palace in the capital Lima, where Castillo's office is located, and found $20,000 in cash in a bathroom allegedly belonging to a senior advisor. Castillo fired the advisor and said his administration is committed to fighting corruption. One thing Pedro Castillo had going for him as president of Peru was identity as authentic man of the people, including absence of personal links to corruption, Lima-based journalist Simeon Tegel wrote on Twitter. Now, just as his approval hits 25%, that image is shattered. Hard to see him dodging impeachment, however unconstitutional. Yeah. Man, they really work hard to tear down leftist leaders when they get into power, especially, and the U.S. usually supports things like that, which is kind of funny. Not funny, but funny, you know what I mean? In Chile, traditionally one of the region's most stable and wealthy countries, 35-year-old Gabriel Boric, a former student protest leader, held a polling lead over his far-right rival before a runoff presidential vote set for December 19th. Boric, who is campaigning to reduce inequality and tackle climate change, is a prime example of what Valeria Vasquez, a Mexico City-based analyst with the consultancy firm Control Risk, dubs the millennial left. This new millennial left has the base of old forces, she told Al Jazeera, referring to left-wing movements such as trade, unions, and social political parties. They are starting to rebuild around the historical base using other mechanisms, governance via Twitter, for example, to help gain power. Building on that older base with social media will be key for the biggest prize of all, Brazil's election year next year. This is kind of like, you see this in America quite a bit as well, with the pushback from the right and places, from conservative politicians and things like that. For instance, You saw that with Nina Turner and her congressional run, where she was ahead tremendously in the polls. Tremendously. Like, probably about, I think it was like 16 points or something like that, was ahead in the polls. And then her opponent, who was in the primary with her, it was a special election because um, the congressman currently in there had retired. So basically, her opponent decided to take a bunch of corporate money from, you guessed it, Republicans and corporate interests. So, what that did is they ended up buying massive amounts of television ad space and things like that, and started basically calling Nina out for doing things that she didn't do that were the exact opposite of what her policies and beliefs are. And so they basically demonized her and made her the exact opposite in the public's eyes. And it dropped her approval rating quite a bit. And she ended up losing the race by a very small margin. But you see this all over the world. Anytime anything progressive or leftist pops up, they tend to do this. Let's see here. Likely pitting the incumbent far-right former Army captain Jair Bolsonaro against former left-wing president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, the contest will offer voters in Latin America's most populous nation a stark choice. The common dynamic between Chile and Brazil, we see mass movements of people rising up to reclaim their democracies and constitutions. David Adler, a Mexico City-based coordinator with the Progressive International Advocacy Network, told Al Jazeera, in both cases, we see candidates of reaction threatening to depress those movements. Again, as I was saying, you get that push back in those situations in a major way. Parts of the old guard remain on stage. Yet, even as a new group of left-wing politicians gain ground, some remnants of the old guard Cold War style authoritarians have not fully left the stage. In Nicaragua, 76-year-old Daniel Ortega secured a fourth consecutive term in November in an election many observers criticized as neither free nor fair. Ortega battled the Somoza dictatorship with the Sandinista rebels through the 1970s, but today has allied himself with conservative elements in the powerful Catholic Church, backed a total ban on abortion, and jailed political opponents, including some of his old Sandinista comrades. Oh, this guy sounds like a peach. What a sellout. Ortega paints his opponents as gringo stooges who would sell the country out to the U.S. The weird thing is that the U.S. probably likes this guy quite a bit. In Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro has presided over the Western Hemisphere's worst refugee crisis, forcing 5.9 million people to flee the oil-rich country in search of food and security, according to the United Nations Refugee Agency. According to Kavanaugh, no one in the region's emerging left is campaigning to govern in the model of Maduro or Ortega. Part of what ended the last pink tide was a big drop in commodity prices starting in mid-2014, analysis said. Left-wing governments in places such as Brazil and Ecuador had tied their policies and economic models to the extraction of natural resources. When prices dropped, economies contracted, and angry voters blamed incumbents. Which is kind of a good thing for progressives on the left, because we can push for greener energy and things like that in those countries. And hopefully we get some representation down there, sounds like we are, to make those things happen. In the past pink tide, natural resources were more important, Vasquez said, adding that while they still matter to the new crop of left-wingers, they are less of a focus. Standard electoral cycles where voters get tired of one party or ideology and vote for their opponents also likely played a role in the region's rightward drift several years ago, analysis said. But as the political pendulum swings back to the left, observers far beyond the region are watching as the new dynamics unfold. Latin America is so influential in the imagination of progressives around the world, going back to Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, Kavanaugh said. There is a rising green tide in Latin America that has met the pink tide. It would be a bit different in every country, but it will be interesting to see what emerges. So, why is this important, guys? The reason that this is important to us is because, obviously, the geographical location of the countries we're speaking of Latin America. When you see people are taking to the left in the way that they are in countries below us to the south of us, and how that's building and building, and you can kind of see some of those changes here, but you see also in both places the divide and how much the right is fighting back tooth and nail to get rid of us and to silence the voices of the left and the progressives. You kind of see that we're not alone in this fight, that there are ways that we could combine forces with places that are close to us to kind of bolster the ideals of leftist and progressive communities. So I think this is really important to keep an eye on. And it's different than you would see with other Cold War socialist regimes, because, again, like they said, that was all about commodities. And this is less so because you're seeing a lot of movement towards ideas of fighting against climate change and equality for all people in a way that has not been in the past in pink tides before. So it's quite interesting, and we should definitely keep an eye on it. It's something that could affect us in a major way, and if we keep an eye on it, it'll be less easy for right-wing conservatives here and abroad and down below us to basically sabotage the movements of the progressives. International politics are extremely important, and I think we should keep a better eye on them, definitely.